Please make sure everybody gets this. Okay. All right, we're going to do something a little bit different today in an effort not only to review some material for the class and to teach you how you can use material from the book itself on the test. What we're going to do, I'm going to break you into groups. I'm going to have each one of you look at group 1, look at the intersections reader. The rest of the people, these are chapters out of time bind. Once you get together with your group, probably about 2 to 3 people apiece. We have 8 groups. Maybe some groups will have 4. Probably the ones with more chapters, I'll put more people in there. Group 2 and group 7 in particular. And I want you to go, I'm going to put the test on the board, and I want you to go through the chapters that you're assigned, that your group is assigned, and find evidence to support the questions. For question 1, most of you in the later chapters are not going to find much material on that, but I still want you to look there. Those of you that are going to be in group 1, we're going to have you look in the intersections reader, so that will be question 1 itself. So the other people will mainly be looking at question 2 and 3. I want you to basically go through the book. One of the things you might want to do if there's 3 or 4 people in your group is break up the chapter into smaller pieces. Find quotes, evidence, any kind of survey data that Hochschild is using to back up some of the stuff. And then what we'll do, then we'll get back into the larger class and we'll share what we all found. And that way you'll have plenty of examples and reference points to use in your test. And what this will also allow you to do is take time in class to read or review the material. You can't really do a critical analysis of anything the first time you read it. You are in the process of absorbing the material and trying to understand it. Just like I'm telling you right now, and I could be wrong about this, and if I'm wrong, shame on these people, and this is why people don't listen to these people. If you're a movie critic or a theater critic and you only watch the movie once, I'm not listening to what you have to say. Okay. That's not critical analysis to me. And it's probably one of the reasons why nobody listens to these idiots like Roper, what's the one? There used to be Ebert or Roper and Ebert or whatever it was. These idiots that are on Saturday afternoon or whatever talking about movies. Okay? The reason why nobody listens to, at least one of the reasons why a lot of people don't listen to film and TV and movie critics is they watch these things once. And therefore their analysis is shallow and ridiculous. And on top of that, with especially movie reviewers, a lot of them actually get paid by the company that makes the movie that they're reviewing. Disney plants people. Okay? So I'm trying to at least give you the time in class, as well as working with your fellow students. Maybe one of you noticed one thing in chapter 4 and somebody else noticed something else. To be able to combine and synthesize all the things that you know and help each other out. I will be walking around while you're doing this and answering any questions. This worked last time I did this. It worked well. It's worked well when I did this earlier today. So I think you guys should get a lot out of this, and both in the group section and when we get back into the class. And I think it'll make everybody's test better, and it'll be better than me just standing up here giving you page numbers and reading things. Okay, but like I said, I probably, once I get you into groups, give you about 30 minutes to cull through these chapters and look for material to support some of the main ideas in the questions. I mean, obviously you want to look at things like the male dominance and the hostility towards women in the workplace. You want to look at the roles at home. Are they that much different than at the workplace? The division, or at least the separation that, and interesting finding that Hochschild came up with in her book about people, traditionally the idea that they wouldn't want to be at work versus home, and you find throughout the book evidence, particularly for women, who additionally have to do the second shift at home, that that they have to, that they feel that work feels more like home and home feels more like work. Also, how things have changed over time in families and in the work world itself. So, all right. Anybody have any questions up front? All right. Most likely, I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to count everybody. Excuse me. And I'm going to determine how many groups we need. we should hopefully have enough for 2 to 3 people in each group. And some of the groups, again, I'll probably give 4 people. So, and I'm going to do it based on, to avoid a lot of inconvenience based on where you're sitting. And this will also help in the sense that many of you know the people you're sitting next to. And if I put you in a larger group as well, then you'll be interacting with people you don't know. And I think this will be, in general, not only helpful for now, but later on when we start to do more, we're going to do more of this as we go on. Group exercises, class exercises, and hopefully this will elevate the amount of participation in the class itself. So let's go over and break up these groups. And let me 34. So about 4 people per group. All right, so let's make this group 1. You guys have the intersection readers. Obviously, you only need really to focus on, well, I mean, there's 3 chapters you need to focus on. The formal organization chapter, which will talk about those elements of traditional society and stuff. The one on the family that discusses the different forms of family, and then one on economics. Okay? All right, so you guys are group 1. Group, let's see. Let's make, see here, I'm trying to get, because group 2's got 3 chapters. Let's move you over here. You want to sit over here? So you guys are group 2. You guys have chapters 1 through 3 in the time buying. This is group 3. You guys are group 4, 3. Let's do U4 is group 5. U4 is group 6. There and there. And U2, group 7. And the rest of you will be group 8. Okay, like I said, what you want to do at first is try to determine how you're going to break up the work. I mean, obviously you don't want everybody doing the same thing, so break up the chapters. And again, try to share books if people don't have them. And then, you know, write down the page numbers and a little bit of a description of the evidence. You might want to dog-ear the pages, each one you look at. And then I will put the test, so make sure to write, everybody please for a minute. Make sure to write down what chapters your group is responsible for. You guys, please. Everybody, please, for a minute. Make sure you write down the chapters your group is responsible for. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the test up on the screen here, and you can look over the test questions. So make sure to write this down, everybody. Go ahead.
What is the impact of divorce on children? And I saw some of the questions sometimes here. The children, this says on page 113 that the children of
Page 113.
yeah, divorced parents or single parent household didn't have to be in child care facilities or be with another relative. It seemed like between the two, it was either that mostly for the other. And I have some percentages. Depending on your class, I guess some get nannies, which can result in guilty feelings with the parents, like if the nanny gets called mommy or if the nanny sees the child doing their first thing or whatever. It said the U.S. divorce rate is 50% on page 111, I believe. It said it increases with each age group, peaking at 50 years old. And on page 113, these children are more likely, the children reared by both parents to experience emotional problems during and after they grow up, and are more likely to be juvenile delinquents.
And you remember there was a debate in that section about whether it was divorce itself that was causing this issue, or was it divorce intermingling with other factors like poverty or bad parenting or neglect, that even a wealthy, like, I assure you that Charlie Sheen's kids can't be doing well. And you can have, and sometimes the money makes it worse, because a child of a wealthy parent will go, Dad and Mom have all this money, yet they still won't spend time. And it almost is a mockery that everything in their life is going great except for Dad just not spending time with them. And I would love to hear from Charlie Sheen. First of all, I'm pretty sure he's not allowed to see these kids right Same with Billy Joel. Billy Joel can't actually even drive his daughter in his car because he's been arrested so many times for drunk driving. I'm absolutely amazed that Whitney Houston still had custody of her children. I don't know how that was taking place. That shows you the power, though, of money and celebrity status. But again, there are these other factors, so that's part of it. So go ahead. What else?
And with the debate on the same page, it also said that it still leaves a large amount of people, like a large number of...
Yeah, so there's a lot of kids who come from divorced families for nothing bad, really.
Yeah.
Nothing. But still, 250,000 people a year having issues related to divorce is pretty nasty. You're talking every 4 years there's 1 million people who are becoming progressively more emotionally disturbed and are losing faith in marriage. And what you might say as a sociologist is, if this continues, what is the future of marriage? Or the future of marriage and divorce? Because it's one thing, a lot of people get married, but are they going to get divorced? Or is it going to become an abusive relationship? And studies have shown that even though the process of divorce adds to the general wealth of society, because you pay lawyers and you go get a new household, in general it tends to make people poorer because they have all these other issues. Now they go from a 2-income family to 1. All right, what else? You want, guys, if you want, you can move on to the next point. I think you guys got it pretty good there.
So I did the third question, which was about the work, world, and family
Okay.
conflict. So I started off with, on page 79, it talks about humanizing a work setting.
Right.
So which means that the organization's working to make it better for human potential.
Make it more like a family. Supportive, comfortable, fun.
And then on page 80, it was saying how some companies have on-site childcare, which makes it easier for parents to be able to see their children during the day or drive them with them to work.
So that might be evidence that there's less conflict, that they're trying to come together. Any evidence that there is conflict?
I think on page 100 it was saying how 1 out of every 4 children are in daycare, and then many upper-class families use nannies. So it's like the same thing about how the parents feel the guilt of like not being able to be with their children as much when they do have to put them in the daycare or have them spend all the time with the nannies. But it also says that parents are spending more time with their children now than they were in like the 1970s and the 1980s. So it's kind of like, I think it like depends on your job and like your social class if your work really conflicts with your family.
Right, and what you see in there is, within that statistic is an explanation. First they question the quality of the time spent. And as you know, many of you have or at least expressed sort of in an affirmative manner that many times when you were younger, and you were spending time with your parents, they were sitting on the couch watching television. This is not parental instruction. This isn't, Billy, let me teach you about the world. Let me talk to you about politicians. You know, that type of stuff. It's kind of, maybe I think some of your parents felt they weren't qualified to make these types of statements, but I doubt many of you, your parents sat you down and explained what capitalism is. Like specifically, or what democracy is, and what your role in it is, or how you should behave like in certain settings. Maybe they discussed that with you. They probably talked about things like alcohol, drugs, sex, not letting your friends drive you into silly things, how to behave when you drive on the road for safety, right? Watch out for drunk drivers, that type of date rape for women, that type of stuff. Maybe talk to you about your future career, but never really sit you down and say, well, this is why terrorists do what they do. Which, don't you think kids have questions about that kind of stuff? Why do people kill? Why does war take place? And again, I would suggest, to defend your parents, I don't think they feel qualified to make those types of statements. They actually leave that role up to me. People like me, teachers. And unfortunately, although I'm sure some of your high schools are pretty good, most high school teachers don't. Some of their main goal is, for some, if it's a bad school, is to get out of the school alive, or if it is a suburban school, to get out of school sane. Okay, because high school, I'm telling you, those of you who are doing student teaching, you know what high school is like. And frankly, I'll tell you right now, you ask most teachers, middle school makes high school look like a walk through the park. You ever dealt with 12 and 13-year-olds? They think they know everything. And they're just getting sexually oriented, so everything is a joke. So I said, Billy, come here. And he said, come. Everything is a joke. Am I wrong? How many people ever taught in middle school? Is that the way it's like a little bit? Everything's a big joke, like Beavis and Butthead episode? It can be, at least. If you don't get control of it, it turns into that, right? You get the giggles. That's you all the middle school is the giggles. High school is you're hiding something or doing something. You got something in your locker that the police would like to talk to you about. That kind of stuff goes on. Or someone starts a knife fight in the parking lot. That's the kind of crap that goes on in high school. Or people are just having things like suicidal thoughts or eating disorders or other issues like that that high schools are not well equipped for. And your parents, unfortunately, they either feel they can't talk to you about these subjects or you won't talk to them about these subjects. So, anyway, all right, last thing here, and then we'll move on.
There's not really, there's a chart on page 65 that really summarizes the difference between traditional societies and non-traditional or rational.
So that would be how it changes. Traditional versus rational ones. Compare traditional society. So that's the first part of that question. So keep that in mind. Also that definition of rationalization that's in that front part. So from 64 on to about 66, there's some good results in there. All right, group number 2. So good job, you guys. Group number 2.
64 to 66, you said?
Yes, in the intersection reader. All right, who's group number 2? All right, go ahead. So present like your best evidence and tell us what questions they are applying to.
Okay. Well, we really pretty much jumped around, but
That's fine. Just give us the best thing that you think that would help from those chapters.
all right. On page 33, they talk about the women in the workforce, and
Is that the evil eye quote?
no.
No.
They basically talk about how someone believed that
Oh, women moving into the workforce.
yeah.
Okay, so that is a good part to answer the first part of question number 2.
You said page 33?
33.
Yes.
And yeah, basically how women believe that they need to work longer hours to prove to themselves that they work a good job.
So there's the element of how did the competitiveness in the workplace create conflict and resentment between employees. Remember, I told you this happens on a lot of different levels. 1, it's the employers versus the employees. 2, it's men versus men. And it's women versus women, and it's women versus men. All right? I mean, it's like the Lebanese Civil War. There's like 3-4 sides of this thing. If you know anything about the Lebanese Civil War, very few people made it out alive. Okay, go ahead.
Let's see. On page 22, like towards the bottom, it talks about like marriage and work, and it talks about how amicable they try to help the employees balance the life at work and the life at home. And
How dedicated did they seem to that, or did they seem to just be doing that because they thought that was
like
that
they
makes
thought it
them
was
look
just
good?
Yeah, it made them look good. Like,
So that's a decoupling thing we're talking about, remember? That they profess this adherence to family-friendly policies, just like McDonald's tries to give you the impression that they use fresh meat and stuff. And I'll tell you right now, sorry, I've worked for that company and the stuff's frozen, and I bet it's been in a warehouse for 3 years before it even gets to the store. So, but they want you to believe that it's fresh because they don't. You think, just like Walmart's not going to say, hey, come into Walmart and buy some plastic garbage made by Chinese slaves. But that's the truth of what's going on, isn't it? For the most part. Come in and see our disheveled, stressed out employees who make too little amount of money. Come in and see that. Right? So anyway, go ahead. So page 22, what else?
what else?
You guys had chapters 1 through 3? How about the evidence of the workers' culture, the culture of workaholism? Did you find any evidence of that in the corporate culture? The concept of ideas, trying to get ahead. I'm sure a lot of you found that. That's what a lot of the book was about. Well, just give me one of them. Fine.
Well, I don't know, I just seen one where on page 10 about, it was not talking about religion, but there was another one about how children spend less than hours in childcare centers. That's
Right.
on page 10.
And actually, some of the evidence she presents almost contradicts the intersection reader. But she tries to suggest that people are, or at least what she's trying to suggest with Amoco is that these people spend less time with their kids. Now, maybe not comparing it from a historical standpoint, but she's saying compared to other people at other companies, these people seem to spend more time at work. That's the point. Like, you got that out of the waiting window. That was the point of that chapter. Right? That Hochschild is trying to suggest that this is a form of alienation brought upon by the corporate culture, suggesting that people should be at work and not worry, that family should be secondary, if that. Right? So, go ahead.
We found another thing about the woman named Gwen, and how she says that her boss is like her dad, since her dad like walked out on her.
So there's an example of that family is work and work is family.
Yeah.
All right, one more and then we'll move on to the group, because I want to make sure you get everybody. Maybe something from chapter 3. Those first chapters were kind of short.
Chapter 3.
Isn't that the administrative mother? Is that one?
What page was that?
Chapter 3 is an angel and an idea. That's where they're describing this concept of creating a family-friendly workplace.
Yeah, and then on page 28, they also talk about 48% of American working women and 61% of men claim that they still want to work even if they don't have the money to live comfortably as they would like.
So one of the arguments of why people are workaholics or why they spend less time with their family is that they have to. Does that appear to be the case? No. So again, we have these contradictions. And it really drives people crazy. A social psychologist called this cognitive dissonance, where you say if you say you're a good person but you kick puppies, right? Then either one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to stop kicking puppies or you're going to redefine yourself as a bad person. And I think what people feel caught in is that, remember where I put the company person versus the family person? People want to do both. But in reality, it's very difficult. It's near to impossible. And so people say stuff like, well, and you heard Hochschild, when she interviewed people, they would say stuff like this, well, I really wish I had more time at home. And then the next question will be, well, you're working overtime, did you put in for this? And they would say, yeah. And she would say, why? Do you need money? No. And so it's like, huh? And if you're a member of one of these families and your mom or dad is doing something like this, you got to think, you're just lying, you really don't want to be here. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me, right? And again, if you explore this issue, you can see why people don't want to spend time, I hate to put it this way, but why they don't want to spend time with their family, especially when, and I know some of you are barely out of your teens. Parents nowadays don't read books. I don't know if they ever did. They don't read books about parenting. They don't do any analysis of what happens to the teenage mind as it grows older. The teenage mind starts to develop what we call an oppositional frame. That a teenager will disagree with you just to disagree with you. Right? Partly not only just because not because they're trying to be difficult, but because they're trying to develop their own unique personality. And also the fact is they're also responding, some people say, to the negligence that occurs during their early childhood. That this, hey, Dad, Mom, oh, you want to be my friend now that I'm 13? Where the hell were you when I was 6? When I was at daycare I remember as a child spending 8-9 hours at daycare, especially during the summer. I never got the sense that, and I always knew that my mom had to work because she needed money. You understand these types of things, but it still bothers you. And you can't roll back time. So. All right, any other thing? All right, group 3. Or group 3.
Well, on page 37, it talks about a woman, American employee, Linda, how she says, I usually come to work early just to get away from the house. She talks about like how like at work like she can joke around and be like more comfortable and everything.
Yeah, and that was a shocking statement to Arlie at first when she heard that.
And then on page 30 it says, for Linda, home had become work and work had become home.
So there's and then she even talks about the time bind. So there's the time bind right there.
What page was that?
What page?
37 and 38.
Yeah, so that describes this thing, the subtitle of the book. Okay, remember Arlie's trying to figure out a couple things here. how are family-friendly? She first started out trying to see how are these family-friendly policies being integrated into the corporate culture. She also wanted to see, well, what's the corporate culture like? And then she also wanted to see the role of women, but she found this other element that she didn't think she was going to find, but it just kept coming up, so she wrote about it. All right, what else?
On page 44, they talk about how being that they get more respect at work. Like when they do something good at work, they get a promotion or a raise, but at home, the odds are if they do something right, their kids are yelling at them like it's their fault when they did it wrong.
Right, it's Mother of the Year award.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. But you think about it, it doesn't. Right? Mother's Day ain't enough. Okay. All right, what else?
And then on page 63, it talks about Bill, another American employee, how he's a better father at work than he ever been at home.
Yeah, this is a phenomenon that is actually quite common. I found this to be the case with my dad. My dad, when I was 4 or 5 years old, left and went to Arizona, and I didn't see him again until I was 12. Then I went out to see him when I was 12, and he worked at a mechanic shop with people who were, with young men who were about 18 and 19 years old, and they would say stuff like this to me: "Wow, your dad's really cool. I wish he was my dad." And I remember in the back of my head going, "Yeah, I wish I was my dad too." So it's really odd, but that's the feeling that, like, and I assure you that this man's son or daughter is going to probably come to a similar conclusion.
He goes on saying how, like, at the office, like, he calls, like, his employees who work on him, his sons and daughter,
Right.
how they are grateful and eager to learn.
Probably goes to their weddings and all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
And what was that?
Because it's easy to be a parent if it's 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, isn't it?
Yeah.
When the bell rings, it's over. It's like the difference between being the president and working at the Treasury Department. If you're just merely an employee at the Treasury Department, when does your day end? About 5 o'clock. If you're the president, when does your day end? Never. If India attacks Pakistan in the middle of the night, you got to be up. Okay? Which, believe it or not, to show you the stupidity of some leaders, and Hitler was asleep when the Allies invaded Normandy, and nobody would wake him up. I assure you, President Obama is going to get woken up if China attacks South Korea or something. Let's hope that never happens. Anyway, go ahead.
And then for the last one on page 66, he pretty much admits that with all his children, he only really bonded with the youngest one and never did with the oldest children because of work, and how he just, like, didn't really care for them, but since he got older.
So he sees that there's a problem here.
Yeah.
And at least he's willing to admit it. A lot of other people, he didn't seem like he had a solution for it. But he seemed to have felt that he neglected his kids. And probably neglected his wife as well. And left her basically with the ability to raise these children. And I don't think we really needed any more children that aren't raised by both their parents. I mean, studies have shown that this is a serious, serious problem. You know, you know, if you look at a lot of people who eventually become murderers, they many times have very strained relations, if any relationship at all, with their fathers and mothers. Charlie Sheen, or I mean not Charlie Sheen, but although you could put Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen, again, did not have a relationship with his father. But if you take someone like Manson, his mother, at one point he thought his mother was his sister, and he had never any real contact with his father. Now, not everybody turns out that way. Look at Obama. Did he have any contact? Was he raised by his father? Not one single bit. I don't even think he really knew much about him at all. You know, he moved back to Kenya at one point. He had a stepfather that was Indonesian, and eventually they moved to Indonesia. That's why everybody thinks that's why a lot of people think he's Islamic. And again, I will repeat to the American political structure. And I'm sorry that there's something wrong with that. Why? I thought we had freedom of religion in this country. I guess when you run for president, you don't have freedom of religion. And Mitt Romney's going to find this out once they start talking about his Mormonism. Okay. You wait till even Santorum, who's got some different views, I would just put it that way, they'll attack him on some of his religious beliefs. There's no doubt about it. So anyway, go ahead.
And then for the last one, on the same page, page 66, they asked him, like, if he had a chance would he do it over again, and they say he hesitated, and he said no, probably not, and just because how he liked how his life was.
And he basically says here, only after 20 years did my wife tell me that she was hurt when I told her my job was my #1 priority and my family was #2. So that's a perfect quote right there, and that's on page 67. I'm not sure I even remember having said it, but I'm sure I did. Right? And keep in mind as well, if you want to use those Office episodes, remember when Michael tried to create this family atmosphere and the damage he was causing to his position by making jokes? Remember when he hugged Phyllis and was like trying to make her feel better about that Kevin had insulted her weight and her looks? And then he thought it was okay, he thought it was a compliment to tell her that he was getting sexually aroused by her. Like that was okay. And by doing that, he sent a signal to the rest of the people in the office that it's okay to act unprofessionally. And the boss here is saying, hey, I neglected my family, so it's okay if you do it. And not only it's okay, but I expect you to do the same thing. So, all right, anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, group 4. Where's group 4?
Right.
All right, go ahead.
Alright, we found a couple that apply to like most of the questions.
Which chapters? 6 and 7?
6 and 7, yeah.
All right.
On page 75, there's the reference to Vicky, I think it is, who only takes 6 weeks of maternity leave.
And she was an executive.
Yeah.
One of the only female executives.
And she felt that 6 weeks was actually too long because she feels a strong loyalty to the company because of the type of corporate culture they create to make work seem more.
Yeah, her life seemed to be going well.
Yeah.
She seemed to get treated with a certain amount of respect, although she did mention that she was challenged. Now, one of the things that, how did the people react when Vicky came back after 6 weeks?
They were a little shocked that she only had taken 6 weeks.
Do you think that'd be different if she was a man and she took paternity leave, where it doesn't stress and tax your body? Although I'll tell you right now, what I told my other class, you change diapers for 6 weeks to tell me how much fun that is. Baby vomit. Babies vomit almost, when they first start eating, they puke almost everything up. Okay, and they throw stuff, and it is a mess. And changing a diaper is not like picking up dog poop on the ground. Trust me. Okay, it is a much more sickening job than that. And you can actually get hepatitis A from it. So, I'm telling you. You get worms from it too. If you touch your hand to your mouth after you touch the dirty diaper and haven't washed your hands on it. Look, I'm glad it seems like I'm the only one who's telling you this stuff about parenthood. Everybody else wants to tell you some lie that, oh, it's great and you'll never forget the moment you bring home your baby. And I'm sure that's great. But then it gets down to the real nitty-gritty, doesn't it? All that stuff, it's like, to me, it's like romance. In the first 3-4 weeks, you're like, oh, did you see the way they walked in the room? And then you get married and it's like, ugh, get that sleep out of your eyes. And comb your hair. You smell. Take out the trash. Stuff gets real. The matrix falls apart. You're left with the desert of the real. Okay, which is ugly. Anyway, go ahead.
Right, yeah, it would definitely be different if she was a man. It would be the opposite.
They'd be like, dude, why did you take off work? And you saw it in that soaps thing, right? Where they gave that guy crap that he was watching soap operas all day. And he was probably like, I'd rather be here than changing diapers. I mean, come on.
Yeah, this also indicates the high level of competition in the workplace that's created.
That she felt she had to come back. And plus, the work is family.
Yeah, it's like
these people who are friends.
It's like a double-edged sword. Like, she wants to be there, but she also has to be there. And this also indicates that women feel as if they need to work harder than a man would. And there's a figure on page 76 that with all the hours combined at work and home, women put in 96 hours to a man's 75. And men are getting paid more. And then...
And you don't get paid at home for washing the dishes. I mean, I wish you did, but you don't. You should pay me for dusting because I hate doing it. Anyway.
And then on page 92, there's a reference to the employee that wants to shift to part-time. And the boss...
Eileen.
Yeah. And the boss is telling her it's not about the quality of the work, it's about the volume of the hours.
Right, and that speaks to that decoupling thing and also the corporate culture that even though they profess this support for family-friendly policies, it's a new thing, and therefore it has not been fully internalized by the corporate culture. And you see this because he even says, like, I don't know how to do part-time or something. At one other point in the book, he says, I don't know how to do part-time. And he doesn't even understand her analogy about the lawn mowing.
Yeah.
Right? Part of it has to do with the fact that this seems to be a customer service representative. And it's like, look, if you run a liquor store and the liquor store is closed, it is about hours, isn't it? if you're not open, nobody. I mean, if you own a liquor store and you shut down at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're gonna be broke real quick. Just like if you sell pizza and you shut down at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're not gonna make a lot of money. All right, what else?
So this just speaks to
So do one more and then we'll move on.
these are the only two that we have.
Okay, that's fine.
But this speaks to how the American employers want to be at work because of the necessity of the volume of hours that they need to put in to get ahead, and also because of the corporate culture creating a home environment.
Okay. Where are we at? What group are you guys? 4?
Yeah.
All right, where's 5? All right, go ahead, 5. Just do 2 of your best ones and then we'll move on. Tell me what questions. Okay. If you got 3, that's fine, but do them quick.
Alright, page 107, both question 2 and 3.
Okay.
75 and 76.
Quotes. One, about Denise in this atmosphere. Denise wanted absolutely nothing to do with flexible or shorter hours, gender war on shorter hours.
And plus, she was in she was in an old boy's office.
Yeah.
So it was one that was more traditionally male. It probably had to do with warehouse work or something, where things were being lifted. And one of the things that men will do with women that come into like a warehouse job where there needs to be a lot of heavy lifting, like they'll be like, "Go ahead and lift that box," or sabotage them by saying, "Oh, you need this tool," and they needed some other tool, or not teaching how to run the forklift properly. It's what we call setting up to fail. And they'll do this when African Americans started coming into the workforce. They did this stuff too. So see, and then they would go to their boss and say, "See, I told you these women can't handle it." Go ahead.
And page 106 is which was that? I think that was for question 3. We had about she took off paternity leave or something, and they were giving her a hard time about it. She was talking about the older men in the office that were offended.
Well, also she said that they were betting on whether or not she was going to come back. I mean, how more hostile can you get than that?
Yeah, and they said they took no time off of paternity leave, and they feel they paid their dues to Everco. So when she took time off, they used that as an excuse to say she wasn't paying her dues like they had, or that it wasn't they weren't as good a manager as they were.
Right, and they felt, hey, look, you're hiring these people who need to take 6-7 months off for a baby. I don't do this, and you don't give me a promotion based on that, but you promoted her. What's that about? And then because with men and women, not only do you have this resentment towards each other's gender, you have this sexual tension. That a lot of men in the company felt that women were using their sexual prowess or their sexuality to curry favor, which is something women have always been accused of in the workplace. Okay. All right. What else?
In chapter 9, it really relates to question 3.
What page?
Page 130. It talks about serious people with well-paying jobs without time with family. And the quote was, "They need to realize that serious players have serious families." It's pretty much saying how America doesn't have family values.
Or at least that there are other values that are over top. Even though, because you'll never hear a politician out in public say that this is a country of businesses, family secondary. You'll never hear people say that. But you watch people's actions and what the government is much more likely to give a company a tax break than families. Like all you have to do is look at the bailout. They bailed out AIG. They didn't bail out families and buy their mortgages and give them houses for free, which they could have easily done. Because they did. There's a lot of reasons for that. But part of it has to do with the fact that, look, most people tell you, look, even though they don't want to say this out in public, business first, everything else second or third or fourth. Okay? And that's clear. That if you want to be a serious player, you can't have a family. Not you can't spend a lot of time with them. You shouldn't have one. All right, what else?
On page 131, it said corporate and higher position men did not necessarily support paternity leave, while middlemen with kids and childcare did. And this is just, I mean, you can use it to say that the more you're in a company, the more desensitized you become to
Also, the
having
more
a family.
higher income you have, it's less of a concern. Or at least you think it is. But you saw with the one guy who hadn't spent any time with his children, they're not going to have fond memories of dad. And these are people like, I guess it was Bill Denton was his name. These are people, when they die, no one's going to be at their deathbed. These are, like Ronald Reagan's kids. They couldn't stand their father. And one of them was named Ronald Reagan Jr. They took open oppositional positions. His daughter changed her name to her mother's maiden name and actively campaigned against her own father. And that's part of what she said. Go ahead, though. One last point, and then we'll
Last
move on.
thing, page 132, it said America's environment made men feel the label of a family man is a bad thing and questioned their masculinity.
132 or 142?
132, it's the last page of the chart.
Yeah, that's an excellent point right there. There's hostile work. You can't get any more hostile than that. And you remember even back to the Office episode that Michael was telling jokes about women mostly. Remember he told the joke about a guy goes to a $5 lady of the night and gets crabs, right? He didn't talk about some male prostitute or a male stroll. There's no male strippers in this world, is there? Okay, anyway, all right. Anything else? All right. Group 6. All right, go ahead.
So, for chapter 10, it starts off on like page 133 about a lady named Connie and how she has a very like hard driving, like boss strict militaristic type.
So that'd be the one for the tension.
For the move of women to work, on page 135, it talks about how she doesn't want to outsource motherhood. So it's like women have to give up family life now because they move into a workplace. Page 140 would have to be about corporate culture, where the boss, Arnie, says that we have a business to run, and he doesn't really care for this lady having to deal with family problems.
Right, and I doubt he may not have had that type of attitude if that would have been a man. We haven't even discussed this. What if you have a child that has special needs, or is autistic, or needs health care or something? You're basically out in the cold in this world. There's nobody's going to give you any special dispensation. You know what some bosses are going to say? Tough. A lot of people have problems. All right, what else?
Page 136 is the boss confronting her about her taking her child to get medical attention.
Right.
So that's part of how...
She did, though, admit that she sort of fibbed a little bit about what time she needed off, and her boss was essentially accusing her of using that as an excuse to take off of work and still getting paid.
136.
All right, one last thing and then we'll move on.
144, the boss blatantly says that he is opposed to family-friendly policies. So that's just how, like, the decoupling, as you said, is kind of like...
Right, and also this hostility towards women, because the people in the company, particularly the managers, felt it was women that were not only taking these programs, but they were abusing these things. To take 6 months off. You must be kidding me. In a business, that's like 10 years. You know? All right, anything else? All right, next group. Who's 7? Go ahead.
We did page 89, refers to question 2, and how do employees want to stay home instead of going to work, or go to work instead of staying home.
Right.
And there's a quote at the bottom that says, he thinks the kids need me all the time. It's good for them to do out without me sometimes.
Right, and you know, on page 188, it says this stuff. This is the work as home. For Mario, Deb, and their co-workers, strong social bonds developed on the line. They were friends to joke with and confide in. Co-workers would often shop and drink together. I'm not sure how shopping and drinking goes together. Or go fishing and hunting. Yeah. Once you mix drinking and hunting, that's always a good mix, isn't it? Well, let me bring my 357 while we go drinking and hunting. Anyway, go ahead.
And then we got another one on 198 for question 3.
Okay.
Who dominates the values of the company?
And you also saw this element of one of the questions that why aren't Amerco working parents putting up a bigger fight for family time?
Yeah, and it talks about how the upper management at Amerco doesn't really care about family-oriented culture.
Or at least they put work time above that. The family's important after you get done with your work.
Yeah.
Right? It's like what your parents tell you. You can watch TV after you're done with your homework. And there's never any time for TV, isn't there? Anyway, go ahead. One last thing and then we'll move to Group 8.
Another one on question 198 talks about similar, how they failed to create a program for work-family balance, and that it's a cultural contest between what goes on at work and home.
And on 199 at the bottom there, Hochschild quotes a study that I believe she did with Bright Horizons, which was a child care center. And then down at the bottom, she asked, one of the questions was, do you ever consider yourself a workaholic? A third of fathers and a fifth of mothers answered yes. All right, group number 8. Anything else you guys want to add? All right, group 8.
In chapter 15, I found 2 quotes are both on page 219.
Okay.
And one of the quotes says that one of the ladies said that no one ever said that on his deathbed that I wish I had worked harder in the office.
That's the point I was making.
So basically what she's saying is like people took their values, and then the other quote said that actually I'm not putting my time where my values are. So they were wasting their family time in the workplace, and then people were realizing that towards the end of their lives when they were.
It almost becomes like a drug addiction, where you know you shouldn't be doing this, but you still find yourself picking the phone up on Friday night and calling the drug dealer, and it's harming you, and you can't stop it, and you want to stop again, but you think that you're a better person than this, but you still can't stop it. And it's almost even more insidious than a drug addiction, because the rest of the world looks at, the outside society looks at a drug addiction like a problem. This is rewarded. This is, wow, you're a success. People, I mean, it'd be like going, hey man, I shot heroin up 7 times today. Wow, that's really successful. I bet you're really making it in life. Aren't you happy about that? I mean, but again, what you start to realize after a while is that work has stolen your life away from you for a lot of these people. Even people who are successful and love their job. All right, any other comments? Is everybody clear on how to put this stuff up on Blackboard? All right, if you have any problems, let me know. If you're scared that it didn't go up, bring in a paper copy. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. I hope this helped. You guys got a lot of evidence now. What?
It's due on Monday, right?
It's due on Monday, yes. But make sure to upload it before class. Recording is massaged.